Which of the following is not true about the coelacanth, a kind of fish? Take a guess. Is it A, nobody has ever found a fossil younger than 66 million years old? B, they don't reach maturity until at least 40 years old? Or C, they have a lifespan of 40 years old? Two of those statements are correct and one is false. It's probably not even the one you're thinking of. Keep listening to Formosa Fauna to find out more. Spend the next 20 minutes feeding your brain with Formosa Fauna so you can become smarter than all of your friends. Every Friday is Formosa Fauna Friday. Hello, I'm Tristan, the voice of Formosa Fauna. I love animals and I love talking about them. If you're even remotely curious about the animal kingdom, you're in the right place. Today we're going to talk about uncovering Eurasian otters from Kinmen's diet, extinct for 66 million years, the coelacanth reappears, 158 endangered giant tortoises, released in the Galápagos after more than 180 years, and genes are selfish molecules. Let's dive right in. Sometimes on this program, I really say some stupid things, and I love to keep that in because nobody's perfect, and it's funny. If I get a laugh out of it, hopefully you will too. We're going to start off by talking about the researchers at Taipei Zoo who are using an unusual tool to learn more about the endangered Eurasian otters that survive in the wild on Kinmen, which is their droppings. Because the largely nocturnal animals are rarely seen, scientists have spent years collecting and analyzing otter scat to better understand their population, habitat, use, and diet. Since 2016, Taipei Zoo researchers have conducted annual field surveys in Kinmen, bringing samples back to the laboratory for DNA analysis. These studies help identify individual otters, track population trends, and determine what the animals are eating, of course. The Eurasian otter is listed as critically endangered in Taiwan and is now found only in Kinmen. The species faces a range of threats, which include habitat fragmentation, vehicle collisions, attacks by free-roaming animals, and human disturbance. Researchers found that while otters consume a variety of prey, including shrimp, crabs, frogs, snakes, and water birds, fish make up the bulk of their diet. Tilapia, an invasive species introduced from Africa, appeared in more than 70% of scat samples collected in Kinmen. Although tilapia can negatively affect freshwater ecosystems, they have become an important food source for the otters. Scientists say long-term scat analysis is providing valuable insights into the species ecology and helping guide conservation efforts. Taipei Zoo is also encouraging the public to reduce disturbances in wildlife habitats, properly dispose of trash, and to drive cautiously in areas where otters may be present. If we look back at that range of threats that they face, habitat fragmentation, vehicle collisions, attacks by free-roaming animals, and human disturbance, which one of those is not human-induced? So, let's pay more attention, folks. Today, you're going to learn all about the West Indian Ocean coelacanth. Did you know that until less than a century ago, scientists assumed that coelacanths were long gone, extinct, like the dinosaurs? The only signs of the fish, Dr. Helen Scales writes, were fossilized remains lodged deep in rocks dating as far back as the Devonian period, which is about 400 million years ago. At least 100 species of coelacanth swam through ancient oceans, but only until the end of the Cretaceous. And by the way, as I say coelacanth, I'm realizing it's really hard to picture how this is written if you do not already know. It's very counterintuitive. It's spelled Coelacanth. and it's pronounced coelacanth. So here's the fact, right? Nobody has ever unearthed coelacanth fossils younger than 66 million years old. And to put that into perspective, Homo sapiens, like you and I, have only existed on Earth for about 300,000 years. Does that put it into perspective for you? So no fossils are younger than 66 million years old. Evidence seems to suggest that this particular branch of the fish family didn't survive cataclysmic mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. But that was the case. But then in 1938, fishers off the coast of South Africa made a huge discovery. Captain Hendrik Goosen pulled up his net and he saw he had caught a fish unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was 2 meters or 6.5 feet long, royal blue, and had an unusual 3-part tail. At the base of each fin was a distinctive fleshy lobe. Goosen put the strange fish aside to show to a local museum curator, who would often come to search through his nets for interesting specimens. This sounds like something out of Animal Crossing, by the way, if you're familiar with the game. A museum curator coming to look for new fish. The local museum curator was named Marjorie Courtenay Latimer. And this museum curator, Miss Courtenay Latimer, could not find this fish anywhere in her guidebooks. None of the guidebooks had anything like it. A while later, a fish biologist came from Rhodes University and wanted to take a look at this stuffed specimen, and actually immediately realized that it was a coelacanth. Dr. Helen Scales says this is the equivalent of laying eyes on a recently deceased velociraptor, right? Like if we were to today suddenly get a call and say, hey, come over, check this out, and you realize it's a recently deceased velociraptor. That's something out of Jurassic Park. The fish biologist named the new genus of living coelacanths Latimeria after Marjorie Courtenay Latimer. Finding the fish so long after it had been presumed extinct was not the only reason why the discovery was so groundbreaking, though. Scientists wondered whether ancestors of the fleshy-finned fish gave rise to the first 4-legged vertebrates that crawled out of the sea and then onto land, leading to all of the reptiles, amphibians, birds, and mammals. They were sort of looking for almost a missing link, right? Recent genetic studies, however, say that it was most likely lungfish, which are relatives of coelacanths, and they were most likely the group of fish, ancient fish, that made a break for land. Since that first discovery off the coast of South Africa, though, they've been found living in the Comoros Islands, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Madagascar. They inhabit the twilight zone, hundreds of meters underwater, often huddled inside rocky caves where they drift about at night, hunting for fish and squid. It's believed that they were able to evade Western scientists and fishers for so long because of their deep habitats in the ocean and their shy nature. In 1997, another marine biologist named Mark Erdman spotted a second species, the Sulawesi coelacanth, in an Indonesian fish market. Coelacanths have been labeled living fossils because over millions of years their appearance didn't change very much. From this over 66 million year old fossil to now, they look pretty much the same. While it does appear to be the case that they didn't change, genetic research shows that over the last 10 million years, coelacanths have gained more than 60 new genes. The idea that these fish could remain visually unchanged for so long has given some people the belief that eating them will prolong your life. Fortunately for the fish, however, they smell and taste terrible, I've been told, and have a strong laxative effect, so they aren't very high in demand. They are now frequently mistakenly caught in shark fishing nets, so the West Indian Ocean species is now considered critically endangered. Only a few hundred are alive today, just a few hundred. Adult coelacanths don't mature until 40 years old or older, and females are pregnant for 5 years before giving birth. They can live for nearly a century. Is this, tell me, the most fascinating fish we've talked about on Formosa Fauna? Because every week it's something new. Every week there's a new impressive one, and I think this has got to be the most impressive. But this week, I think it really tops them all. For the first time in more than 180 years, giant tortoises are once again roaming freely on Floriana Island in Ecuador's Galápagos archipelago. Last week, conservationists released 158 juvenile Floriana giant tortoises as part of a restoration project that is aimed at restoring the island's native ecosystems. The Floriana giant tortoise disappeared from the island in the mid-19th century, largely due to human activity. Wow, what a shocker. Conservation groups and government agencies say the species return represents a major milestone in efforts to restore ecological processes that were lost following its extinction on Floriana. The project involves Ecuador's Ministry of Environment, Water and Ecological Transition through the Galápagos National Park Directorate and the Galápagos Biosecurity and Quarantine Agency, along with conservation organizations including the Charles Darwin Foundation, Island Conservation and Galápagos Conservancy, just to mention a couple. The initiative also includes participation from Floriana's community of about 160 residents. Oh gosh, the the tortoises are about to overpopulate them. 160 residents and 158 giant tortoises. Okay. According to project leaders, community members have been involved in planning, biosecurity measures, and ecological monitoring throughout the restoration process. Conservation efforts on the island have also contributed to the rediscovery of several native species, including the Galápagos rail, a bird that had not been recorded on Floriana for many decades. The tortoises released this year are the result of decades of scientific research. In the early 2000s, researchers identified tortoises living near Wolf Volcano on... Wow, I said that stupidly. Wolf Volcano, on Isabella Island that carried Floriana giant tortoise ancestry. Scientists believe the animals were likely transported there centuries ago by whalers and other sailors. A breeding program was established using these descendants to produce tortoises genetically similar to the Floriana population. The newly released animals are expected to help rebuild a self-sustaining population on the island. Researchers say giant tortoises play an important ecological role by dispersing seeds, shaping vegetation, and creating habitats used by other species. Their absence altered ecological processes on Floriana for generations, and conservationists hope their return will help restore some of those functions over time. Project partners say future plans include the possible return of other native species once found on Floriana, including the Floriana mockingbird, Floriana racer snake, vegetarian finch, and little vermilion flycatcher. Conservation organizations involved in the project describe the tortoise release as the result of years of scientific research, planning, and cooperation among local residents, government agencies, and environmental groups. They say continued monitoring will help determine how the reintroduced population adapts to life on the island and contributes to the recovery of Floriana's ecosystem. What would you think if I told you that genes are selfish molecules? I mean, really think about it. Male black widow spiders will mate even though females eat them immediately afterwards. Animals that warn of others of approaching predators sacrifice themselves at the expense of the wider group. What could explain this if not that genes are selfish molecules? The concept of the selfish gene was popularized by the British evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins in his 1976 book of that name. It states that evolution is fundamentally based upon the survival of different forms of a particular gene at the expense of others. The forms that survive are those that are responsible for the bodily types and behaviors that successfully promote their own propagation. Supporters of the theory argue that because heritable information is passed through the generations by the genetic material of DNA, both natural selection and evolution are best considered from the perspective of genes. Dawkins was strongly influenced by the work of William Donald Hamilton on the nature of altruism and closely examined the biology of selfishness and altruism in the selfish gene. He argued that was the name, of the publication, Selfish Gene. He argued that organisms were simply vehicles that supported their genes or replicators. Genes that help an organism survive and reproduce tend to also improve those genes' own chances of being replicated. Successful genes often provide a benefit to the host organism. For example, a gene that protects an animal or plant against disease thereby helps that particular gene to spread. However, the interests of the replicator and the vehicle may sometimes seem to be in conflict. Genes drive the male black widow spider to mate despite the risk of being eaten by the female. However, the male's sacrifice nourishes the female and improves the prospect of his genes being passed on. Another example of this is honeybees. Honeybees live in colonies which include breeding and non-breeding individuals. By helping the colony survive, the many thousands of non-breeding worker bees ensure the reproduction of the genes they have in common with the sole breeding individual, which is the queen. Critics of Dawkins' theory argue that since individual genes do not control behavior, they cannot be said to be acting selfishly. Dawkins has maintained that he never meant to suggest that genes had their own conscious will, and he later wrote that the immortal gene may have been a better title for the book. What do you think? An update in my Animal Rescues diary. At the time of recording this, I don't have anything to update you on with the feline diabetes and my strongest kitty. She is seriously just so strong. She has one eye. She has disformed rib cage that affects her breathing and her other organs. She has FIV, which is an immunocompromised condition, and now she has diabetes, and she's severely underweight. But every single day, she is sweet as can be. I don't have any updates about that, but I will say that coming soon, I am getting on an airplane and going to the U.S. for the purpose of bringing a Taiwanese dog over to the U.S. to be adopted. That is nuts, right? It's so cool that I can do that. Actually, a long time ago, we interviewed Jenna Dodson, and she mentioned that in Taiwan, actually, they're always looking for people to be flight volunteers, is what she called them. And I thought that sounded like the coolest thing ever. The organizations will usually cover, almost always, they will cover the additional expenses of the flight that are associated with the animal, and then you just pay for your flight. So if I was already going to go back to the United States to visit family, do whatever, travel, work, then I could just, have a buddy tag along and then be part of this dog's amazing story and journey, finding their forever home. I think that's so beautiful. Why they do this, and how they do this, and how it will end up, stay tuned. Keep listening to Formosa Fauna, because I'm going to talk all about it. Thank you for making it to the end of an episode that makes you a Formosa Fauna friend. See you next Friday right here on Radio Taiwan International.